Welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. I have a really awesome guest with me today. Now, would you like to introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Sean. And who am I? I guess you approached me because I'm a project lead of a music project, an EU, Creative Europe funded EU project that is called Keychange. And we work for gender equality in the music business. But you also mentioned that you wanted to know a lot of things about me personally. Okay, cool. So I have a history of being an actress and also a performer. I've performed in and worked in, I think, around 25 countries or something. So worked worldwide, and I am situated in Sweden. My name is Mia Ternström. Maybe I should mention that as well. And I work for an organization in Sweden that is called Musikcentrum. Center of Music, a wonderful name. Yeah, we're a non-profit organization that works for freelance musicians here in Sweden, and one of our projects is the Keychange project that we can talk about. I was also talking to you before we started the recording that I also have a history of studying media communication, language, theater, acting, educational studies as well. So I was just telling you that I studied media and communication before social media. So we were talking about this Instagram and what to share and not. Yes. So I find that very funny that I actually studied all of this on university level before it was, before Facebook, before Instagram, before anything. So when that happened, I had already, talked a lot about it and like, how do we do it, sharing and what do we do? And then I've also looked at it from that perspective the whole time as it has evolved. And you said to me that, should I share the personal stuff or shall you interact the branding or the personal stuff, and how do you do that? And especially in the music business, you tend to share a lot of personal stuff because that is also the content maybe within your music if you're writing stuff and such. And some people tell you no, you shouldn't, and I would tell you that nowadays it's you can do whatever you want. It's like fashion nowadays. You can wear whatever you want. You can do it in your way, which is actually what you should. There is no way of doing it because we've become more relaxed about, for example, Instagram has been here for like since 2010 or 9 or something like that. So, you have seen it evolve. When did you get Instagram?
I got my Instagram about 2011. So I got on pretty early, and I've been posting since. And it was interesting because you see an evolution, And
yes, you do. And you got on it because you wanted to share small, cool pictures that you took via this app.
Yep.
That you looked like the 70s. You add
all the filters. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember
that was the first thing.
The lo-fi was one of my favorites, and then Sierra. I loved Sierra.
We're so old. I'm sorry, but we're so old that we can actually talk about like Instagram in the beginning.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, even with Facebook. I remember when the Facebook posts were you would have Sean Trey's is, and then you would start your post with a verb is watching, and I was just like, wow, that's so it's evolved. And
yeah, of course. And I can say for Swedes, since I am a Swede, when it has it is means ice in Swedish. Oh. So we, of course, made fun of that thing because we incorporated it into and did Swedish sentences and such. So sometimes you can do a meta, a comment to that. And, every country probably did that.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And that's the special thing, too, because there was a couple things that I noticed. The positives of social media, and I want to dive into the positives first because I think that, you can always focus on the negative, but there are a ton of positives, is that it has allowed our world to become a smaller place. But it has also, at the same time, thrown up additional levels of walls because those algorithms are catered to what they think you should be viewing. And it's interesting because I was doing some yoga, and I wanted to put on some relaxing yoga music. So I put it on. And then 2 seconds later, the algorithms thought that I needed to be listening to Indian music. And like, I was well, this is interesting, and it was fun. It was great to interest. And they didn't give me yoga music; they were giving me like Indian hip hop and Indian pop music, and it was really interesting. I was like, wow, that is just something that never pops up into my feed, and yet it's out there, and it comes back to kind of what one of the reasons I wanted to reach out, because we have this very rich world that is full of diversity, full of beauty of all types, and by beauty, I don't mean looks. I mean just a richness of talent. And for a long time, it hasn't been seen. And at no reason for the artist, one of my favorite examples is Susan Boyle. Susan Boyle was a singer her entire life. There was never a moment that she wasn't a singer. But there just happened to be this moment where she popped into the popular consciousness. But she was a singer the whole time. And whose loss is it that she wasn't identified earlier for her talent? Whose loss is it? It's not her loss. It's our loss. It's the whole world's loss, because there was this person with this immense ability and talent that people didn't see. And that's a loss for the whole world, that we're not paying attention to the right things.
Well, that is exactly what we say in Keychange, and that is one of our taglines, actually. Talents, we are losing talents every day.
Yeah.
Because Keychange is a representation and gender equality project, and we don't want to lose that talent. We don't want to. I always use the word smorgasbord, which you probably is familiar with, the Swedish smorgasbord.
Yes, of course.
Like, and in the smorgasbord, you have a lot of dishes, and you could always add dishes and you can remove dishes, but the whole thing is that you can take whatever dish you like, but they are there presented. And I wouldn't want to have a smorgasbord with only herring, although I love herring. I don't want only herring. I always also want potatoes and vegetables, and I'm totally fine with adding a chili or whatever to the smorgasbord, so anyone can take the dishes that they like. But you cannot know unless you're presented to it. So that is exactly what we do. We try to find those talents that are out there, but that aren't presented and that had encountered barriers to actually be promoted and actually be known to the wider audience. So that is what we do in Keychange. We try to tear down those barriers.
Right. And it's important because I think we're doing a better job. I think that the progress is being made. I watched the movie Sister Act with my wife last night. And my wife is a singer from Vietnam.
First or two?
We watched Sunday night. Sunday night we watched the first one. Monday night we watched the second one. We watched them with my daughter. And both, Lauryn Hill, I watched that again and just was like young Lauryn Hill, just like, amazing.
Yeah.
But one of the comments my wife had when she watched that movie, we watched it and she was like, this is so awesome. It's so inspiring. The Asian actress had one line. And my wife was like, I'm happy they had an Asian actor, but, this is San Francisco. There are a ton of Asian people who live there. How can you have one actor and give them one line? And she was like, it's just because, for her, she offered some auditions in the US, and it was like, we want you to come in. We're so excited. And they're like, she's a big star here. It was in The Lion King in Vietnam. She was Nala, and she did a bunch of cool stuff. And she's first winner of Vietnam Idol. And then when she went to the U.S. market, and they're like, nail salon, and or house cleaner, and she's like, not that is a problem, not that those people who occupy those roles in that society, it is wrong, but like, see me. And that's all she said. She's like, see me for who I am.
But what do you think? What do you guys think of the Bridgertons? Because I as I told you, I also had. Have you heard about that series?
I have heard about Bridgerton. Yeah.
Yeah, you've probably seen it as well.
Yeah.
So I come from an acting business. I used to be an actor, and I also worked at the Royal Dramatic Theatre in Sweden. And for me, like really acting and filming has been about representation from like if you're doing a 16th century play or if you're doing whatever. even though men actually performed as women back in the days.
If we go back to Shakespeare, it was all guys.
Yeah, of course. But then it's like, okay, if you're doing Shakespeare, you cannot do have people without Caucasian heritage, blah 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 blah. But then along came Bridgertons, and like, okay, so here we have it.
Yeah.
Now it's the UK perspective, and they're taking responsibility, and I find it awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, okay, it's so wonderful to finally see a queen who is of African heritage, and just being there. And like, I love seeing that person in high status roles, and I'm totally comfortable with it, even though I actually work with shows that are like, we need to have the exact hair color of that person that we're impersonating, and we need to have that they didn't occur until 1762, and we're portraying 1761. So I'm all for details, but when it comes to representation here, I think it adds. I love it.
I look at my daughter, and I think the example that I love is that my daughter is mixed race. And when we were watching The Avengers, and she loves The Avengers. And we were going through all of the early Avengers. She's 5, and she's a huge superhero fan. And it wasn't until Captain Marvel that she's like, now there's a woman. And she loved that. And she's like, why has it always been boys? And why do they look like you, Daddy? Or they all look like you? And I was like, that's a great question to have. And like her favorite character, hands down. And this is what I love. My daughter's favorite character is Miles Morales. And he's the new Spider-Man. He was from Into the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. He is half black, half Latino. And he comes into this world, and you get all of these people who are like, oh, do we have to do it this way? It's going to take away from the old story. It's like, my daughter loves Peter Parker. She loves Miles Morales, and she loves them all. It's like, you don't take away by adding a diversity. You don't take away anything. You are adding a richness that actually represents what the rest of the world looks like, you know?
Yeah, and people are questioning. The question I get always is like, okay, so why is diversity important? And I tend now, I've been working on with this for so long, so I'm like, I'm sorry, but what is the option?
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. But like, how can I answer that question? It's so obvious. It's like, what is what do you mean? Like, why is it important? So you mean that the people who represent like 2% of the population on Earth is to decide for everyone else? I mean, how can you think that?
I had people who commented on my podcast, you're interviewing people from everywhere, all over the world. I'm proud of you. And I was like, you shouldn't be proud of me. There's nothing to be proud of. I am simply trying to find people that are representative of cool stories. And they come from all over the world. It's not something like people were like, good job. And I was like, no, it's not something that should be good job. It should be the norm, that we should just be looking for stories that are beautiful, actors that are talented, singers that have talent.
But I can tell you that this is the future. It is the future. 100%. I can tell you that one of our partners in Keychange is Reeperbahn Festival, which is a huge showcase and also open festival in Germany. I don't know if you've heard about it.
No.
But if you're a European or a mid-European, please do.
Well,
it's one of our core partners.
My father's from the United Kingdom, and so I can speak the lovely English accents if I need to.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Lovely.
They probably understand you better. No, but Reeperbahn Festival is German, and they did a research on gender equality, and they it was the first time that they asked the young audience that came to their festival about why they would go to the festival, if there are any if they, for example, if it was important to the young audience if there was a gender balanced lineup. Or if it was a represented lineup, or if that had like a business, the business of actually buying this product of Reeperbahn Festival ticket, if that meant anything to them. And it was explicit and very clear that the young generation, yes, they would actually avoid a music festival that did not have a gender balanced lineup or a high level of representation, because that was outdated. That is not like that is outdated. That is dinosaur.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if people aren't buying into like diversity is democracy, we should all people should be represented, then I can give you the hands-on money argument that, sorry,
Yeah.
but if you're not diving into this, you will lose money.
Exactly.
Are you with us then?
Yeah, right. And I think that people are. I think that you also have to I grew up in the U.S. and we had this conversation earlier about how people who grow up in a culture that is in the U.S. You had said it when you visited the U.S. You saw that there's mountains, there's the beaches, there's pretty much everything, and people tend to not travel outside the U.S. And for me, I grew up in the U.K. I grew up in Asia. I lived all over the world. And one of the things that was so eye-opening is that I saw people who had beautiful stories. And for me, it's always about stories. Music is about stories. Acting, film is about stories. Art is about stories. It's about how people take their story and represent it. I got to meet one of the coolest people that I've interviewed is my friend Bongani. And he's from South Africa. And he was talking to me about, one of the things I ask people is if you had Aladdin's lamp, what would you wish for? And he wanted to make movies that expressed his worldview and share it with the world. To share, this is my worldview growing up in South Africa, and this is what I would like to show people, and that's important for us to hear. It is important to hear.
It is, and you cannot be aware of that worldview until you've met another worldview.
Yes.
You cannot understand your own worldview because you always have your own truth, and you don't understand that is only your truth before you met someone else's truth, and then you can okay. So this is very interesting for me. I've been touring in the US for almost 15 years. Mm-hmm. So I met a lot of US, and as I mentioned to you, Sweden is very US influenced. So now going from that perspective into an EU funded project where I now work with the UK, Germany, Italy, Spain, Canada, Iceland, Norway, Estonia, France. I hope I didn't forget anyone. It's amazing because these are my neighbors, but at the same time, I'm more far away from Italy than I am from the US, from my perspective.
Yeah.
And that is fantastic. And although I thought I was so close to the UK people, I found working with them in a close collaboration on values. We talked so much about gender equality. We talked so much about representation. And for me, being a Swede, we're Swede. We're so good at everything. We're the perfect diplomats, and gender equality has been our thing since the 70s and such. Yeah. It has been amazing to work with the UK and understand that post-colonial situation of the UK is a totally different thing than neutral Sweden not being in war in 200 years. We have a totally different perspective on everything. Yeah. Which is so amazing. And I've also understood that, okay, your geography, your location, the amount of people, you're being in Nam now, probably also, you can probably relate. Being a small country in between the US and the, as you used to say, USSR, but like the Soviet Union has, of course, given Sweden okay, we need to make sure that the US are happy and that the Soviet is happy. And so that is Sweden for you. We're a mix between Soviet and the States. And we try to stay out of any business because we're small.
Cool. We're cool right now.
We're so cool. We're so cool. But it also has allowed us to actually evolve quite hard, because since we have had peace for 200 years, we haven't put that much money and effort or wasted a lot of men sent out to war and such on those issues. I think that is one of the things that probably contributes to our gender equality. That we weren't destroyed back in World War II. We had our whole infrastructure, and everyone was home and safe, so we could build from there.
I think it's really interesting too that one of the things that you touched on there too is is that just these stories, like one of the things that we are all so close, yet we are so far. And even my wife had a Vietnamese American songwriter reach out to her and said, I want you to sing this song with me. It is the perspective of a Vietnamese American. And she read the song and she's like, I don't understand this. Because it wasn't her perspective, because she had not grown up with those same challenges. And she's like, this is a beautiful song, but this is not my song to sing, because this is an experience I don't understand. I should be singing about my experience and sharing about my story. And again, and I think this comes back to like how we have around the world different people who are dealing with varying. Let me put it this way. When it rains in Vietnam, we are Ho Chi Minh City, where I live, Saigon, as some people call it. We are about 3-4 meters above sea level. We are in a, the part of the Mekong Delta, and when it rains and it is high tide, that water floods the streets. And we have water that is, up to your knees, that's all throughout the street. It is a problem that they have in tropical countries, not just Vietnam. You get monsoon rain, flooding. It is common. And
everyone knows about it.
And no matter how good the drainage systems are, if it's high tide, there's nothing you can do. That's a very unique problem to hear, versus someone who's up in Alaska or in Siberia. They have very different problems, that, and I think we have these different experiences. And one of the things that to me is so powerful is with what what you're doing at Keychange, is that if you get people who grow up inside of a group that does not have, imagine that you grow up and you see a Chihuahua as the only type of dog, and then suddenly you grow up and you meet someone who has a Husky. You're going to be very much like, it's hard to even process that. And that's what I'm saying, is we all grow up in our own different cultures, that it is hard to comprehend someone else's experience unless we are given the opportunity through media to share these experiences. And that's what I think is so important about YouTube and things like that.
Yeah, and what I would say is amazing with Keychange is that within the project, it's scheduled that they meet, what we call, let me just dive into some details of Keychange.
I'd love to hear it.
For every year we select a cohort, and this is a 3-year project, so it's going to end in 2024, unfortunately. But the idea is approachable, and anyone is free to borrow it. So the idea is to select 74 participants from applications from all these countries that I mentioned, and half of them are artists who write their own music, and half of them are what we call innovators, quote Mark, but that would be people maybe like you and me, people who are professionals within the music industry, and that can be anything from being an A&R, having a label. We all even have a music psychologist, person who professionalizes. Yeah, you should have her on your podcast. She is amazing.
I would love it.
Yeah, you probably would.
Yeah.
But what I was getting to is that, okay, we're creating a network here, a network of people who are working as creatives in the music industry and people who are working, of course, also being creative, but like more music business professionals, putting them together in a room for real, an IRL room, which we actually managed to do back in 2020.
That's
in
awesome.
February, like 3
Just
weeks
before it got
COVID.
crazy.
Yes. It was like, oh my God. So the idea is to put them together in the beginning of the year and meeting and interacting and having a conference together for 2 or 3 days, then dividing them into groups and going to 12 showcase festivals and music conferences where they both participate in the festival, but they also get a program that we've done especially for them. And they also get to meet like all these the small part of the big network, like the big group, they connect with 6 of them on these, and then they meet again in the end of the year, all of them. So then they have this we haven't seen this yet since we unfortunately were hit by COVID, but the thing that we did do is a semi version, and what it was striking was that if you meet and you manage to make a secure place, because this is something we talk about a lot, safe spaces, like to be able to actually have a starting point where the conversation, you know, that you're on the same starting point and you can feel safe to express your views and you can be open and connect to all of the others because you're in this for the same reason. So that is one thing. And then we created this network that was really, really strong after just 2 days. And I can say last week I left off as the last festival closed and they were like, oh, is this the end? No, I can't believe it's the end. And we're like, no, it's not the end. It's you have this network. Now, 73 people from 12 countries. And it's an amazing thing that we actually accomplished together.
And I want to point out something from that I think is so, so, so important. For a long time, the system, the music system, the actor system was top controlled. And there was this false sense of scarcity, that there was only a select number of people that would be promoted, only a select number of people that would be, given roles. And then when people fell out of favor, you look at someone like Brendan Fraser, that was from The Mummy. Where did he go? Why did he just disappeared? And there are some interesting stories about why he was blacklisted, and it was for speaking out on issues, and so suddenly he's now having this renaissance, and it's like he should have never left, you know what I mean? And how many other people? But my point being that the idea of, my wife talks about it all the time here, that all of the singers feel like the other people are out to get them, and yet if it's not that way. It is a group of creatives that can help each other, that can build together. And one of the beautiful things that I'm seeing from YouTube and Instagram is that collaborations are on the rise, that people are seeing that you can create a network of amazing individuals that can help you and can lift you up. And it's not, people are not kind of being pitted against each other anymore.
And that is super vital. And I think that ties into what I said in the beginning and what you said as well, like we are losing talent. And coming from being an actor and a singer, I totally see what your wife was saying. I always felt as if I was a burden, always going to audition, always like, okay, you're going to make that in professional skill something that to make a living from. You can never succeed at that. You're like always being viewed as someone who is not a highly skilled professional, and always coming from the perspective of like starting fresh on an audition for someone who I don't know, not having my secure network and my team or something like that. That's a really hard starting point for anyone. Imagining whatever, like every week going to new auditions. I think I did like hundreds of auditions in 1 year, and what that does to your self-esteem, instead of regarding these people as assets and actually the creators of the product that you are selling, that is the actual thing that makes the wheels turn. So if we're losing talent, we're also losing products to sell. So you need to strengthen the talents, you need to help the talents, and that is also what we do in Keychange. Strengthen them and make them grow. Stay. And also if they leave, is there anything catching them, following up? Like what happened? Can we help you? Can we bring you back? Is there a way for you to start from where you were? I mean, this ties, of course, into the paternity thing, which is what I'm doing a lot of. Like, if people get kids, they tend to go away from this, from the culture business, because it's a non-kid friendly, no parent friendly business. And we need to make sure that this doesn't happen, that we don't lose our talent.
It was really that way for my wife. My wife had built up her career and she did everything right. And then everyone's like, don't have kids. don't get married, don't have kids. And she got married.
And don't get old.
And don't get old. And don't get old. Yeah. and for the longest time, you know, and it was tough for us. It was tough for us, you know, when we were coming through this, and I was doing everything I could to support her while working and doing my thing. And then as she started coming back, all people wanted to talk about was her weight gain. And they blasted that in the news, and it was everywhere. And she's like, for years you talked about my music, and now you talk about this superficial thing, you know, and understandably, but she was able to take that and make it part of her story, and to make it say, she was like, you know what, I'm not going to allow you to define me. I get to define myself. But that was part of my background, was that I've been doing branding for singers and athletes and artists for a long time. And that was what my background was in. And so I was like able to assist her with our video message. And by utilizing the power of social media, we weren't going on to TV here and doing interviews on TV because they were trying to create the same narrative. We were like, we put onto our own media the stories we want to share. We put into our own media the narrative we want to have. Because if you leave up the narrative to someone else, and this is something I wish artists knew, do not leave your narrative up to other people. Take control of it. Tell the story you want to tell about yourself. Because you have the power. You have the power now.
Yeah, that's true. And as I was telling you before we started the recording, I was telling you about the Keychange ambassador here in Sweden, who actually done, I mean, she's done a whole career of sharing, not oversharing. Absolutely, she has a high integrity, and you're not like, it's not embarrassing to see her things, but she shares her life, and she doesn't wear makeup on Instagram, and sometimes she's fully maked up and like, yeah, look, this is what I look like when I've been in the studio. Can you see? I look amazing. And this is how I look the night after. La la la. A lot of artists tends to do that things nowadays, and I think that is so liberating to all of us. Yeah. But I'm also like looking forward to that day where your wife can go on stage, like she had her baby 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it's totally acceptable that she has gained weight, and it's like, oh, look at that wonderful post-mummy tummy. It's a beautiful thing that she actually gave birth. I mean, I am so upset whenever I see a movie and someone comes out with a baby and her flat stomach. I'm like, I'm sorry, when you've given birth, you don't have a flat stomach, because it takes like 4 or 5 weeks before it actually goes into something that even resembles what you had before, and sometimes it never does. It's like, don't do that.
Did you see?
Can we just post that image on like that? It's acceptable and that it's beautiful. So,
sorry, of the best. I was interrupting you. No, not a problem. It's a perfect rant and a perfect point. I just was trying to. Halsey does an awesome job of illustrating this. She has a great Instagram, and she was like, and the people were going out into the news and like, look at how great she looks, look at her weight, and she was like, these are my post-pregnancy photos, this is the reality. Stop doing that to women. Stop putting it out there. Stop doing that. And I mean, and it was so bad for my wife that like, even when people found out she was 3 months pregnant, the news broke that she was pregnant, and she had all of her shows canceled in 3 days. Her next 3 months of work all canceled because they didn't think it would be, you know, marketable to have a woman that was pregnant on stage.
That is
messed up.
I worked to my, I mean, in Sweden we say we have a date. We are given a date by the midwife. Like, this is the date you're gonna give birth. I don't know what you call that in English. But we have this... The due date.
The due date.
The due date. Yeah, cool. We have the same, but I didn't know the name. So I was working on my due date.
That's awesome.
Because I could feel that, no, it's not coming. I'm going to be going on stage. With this amazing... on both of my kids, I was working on my due date. And it wasn't any problem. But I've talked a lot about this since I don't know if you're familiar with a very worldwide network that is called She Said So. Have you heard about that?
I haven't, but I will look it up.
I'm happy to mention it here on your podcast, because it has over 10,000 members around the world.
Yeah.
And I am part of the She Said So parental committee. And I've also engaged quite a lot in like parenting in the music industry, since I have been a freelance musician and artist and performer for almost 20 years, and 15 of them with kids, and 16 or 17 since I was also pregnant 1 year before I had my daughter.
Yeah.
So I was a becoming parent, and exactly as you mentioned, I was like, okay, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
So then I can tell you what I have done professionally as a singer. I have been touring with an ABBA tribute show, and that might and actually I've performed at the Hollywood Bowl 3 times as a headliner.
Hold on. Oh, I just bought an ABBA CD today.
Oh yeah, you did. Was it Voyage or? Voyage?
It was greatest hits. It was a greatest hits.
Okay, cool. Because they just released, as you probably are aware.
Yeah.
So what I've done a lot of ABBA, and of course then I needed to be exactly portray the exact image of that ABBA. But since I know far too much about ABBA, I also know that Agneta, who is the blonde in ABBA, she was pregnant. Back in the days when they did, before Waterloo, they did a song called Ring Ring. That was also part of the Eurovision Song Contest that they won with Waterloo, and that was like their big breakthrough. But ABBA, Agneta was pregnant back then. So she had this huge tummy, but they did it anyway. And being a Swede, I of course know that like ABBA are 2 pairs, there are 2 married couples.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah.
Oh, I know my
you
ABBA.
know. You know your ABBA. Since I actually been touring in the US, I have come to understand that the US audience does not know this. They only know Mamma Mia.
My father's English. So that's how I was able to get that.
Okay, cool. So you're the European.
Yep.
But I'm sorry, but the US audience does not know that.
They do not
but
know.
it's interesting that it was 2 married couples who wanted to tour worldwide. And Bjorn, who was married to Agneta, he was the one that like, we're going to make it. We're going to become my big stars. And they started out when they were like around 25 or something like that. Agneta was the youngest. But then when she had 2 kids, that was where the starting point of their career. And so she was pregnant, and they got this gig in Germany, and she had a fill-in.
Really?
So ABBA, Agneta, Björn, Benny, Annie Fried had Ingrid, who filled in. So for like 1 show, they were Abby.
Really? That's,
yes.
I never knew.
No. And the thing is, I've been thinking about that, and I was like, okay, one thing is that we could permit people to actually be pregnant on stage and be post-pregnant on stage, that is okay, that you don't have to be this, getting back to shape thing. The other thing would be someone else actually were a fill-in for you, even if you are an artist on like a very high level. Then maybe that would be okay to have someone to actually do your thing. It's
interesting.
Then it's very interesting because probably people will say, no, I am the artist, I'm doing my thing. It's like, yeah, but people go to, tribute shows in LA, Britney Spears and Justin Bieber, and everyone has their tribute in LA, even though they're still performing.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, I mean, that is an idea, actually. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if
I think that,
probably would protest, but I think that we should relax.
Yeah.
And make and like find a sustainable, because I'm always looking from the perspective of the working person.
Yeah.
And the working person needs to have a sustainable working situation that allows them to become sick or get cancer or have kids or whatever, but still come back. Sorry, interrupting.
No.
Again.
Not at all. I'm good. You're making awesome points. And this is a masterclass, because it's stuff that I've experienced with my wife, and I've seen her go through, and I wish people were I wish more of this discussion was happening, because I'm the father of a daughter who I hope that she has the career she wants, and I hope that she will be able to have the support network so that she can also have the family that she wants, whatever she wants to navigate. And for my wife and I, after our daughter was born, we had these choices to make. And we had, how are we going to play this? Because, my job allowed me to work from home. And so I became kind of the stay-at-home dad. And my wife was going back out to shows and doing things. And so that was kind of the arrangement we had. And so I stayed home. I stepped back from my work that I was doing videos for other people and just started doing all of the content for my wife and myself. And so I stopped doing contract work and freelance work for videos and other artists and just said, okay, well, I'm going to focus in to our business. And it worked out for us, but it was a teamwork. Then it was nice that I had the flexibility with my work to be able to support her, because some people don't have that. No.
I mean, I'm from a Swedish perspective, I tend to understand that. I mean, we've had paternity leave, what do you say? Paternal leave, that is like maternal and paternal, and then there is parental. Yeah. I always confuse parental and paternal. But okay, so we have had paternal leave in Sweden since the 70s. So my dad was actually home with both me and especially my siblings, who are 10 years younger than I. And since we've had it since the 70s, then that has been around for 50 years in Sweden. So nowadays you can be home and be paid from the government for 2.5 years to be home with your kids. And most couples in Sweden do divide this. And there had been a very, very long campaign from governmental to actually make sure that fathers are giving 3 months that they have to take. But the thing is,
it's so important.
Yeah, exactly. And the arguments for this, which is what I'm always putting forward, and that also what I put forward to my husband, who also of course is in on all this, is that if you don't attach yourself to the kid in the beginning and split all of this into, I mean, the classic is mother goes home, she stays home, she takes care of the house and she takes care of the kids, and all of a sudden she's not a working person anymore, she's just a housekeeper with kids. And the man does not get it at all because he hasn't been there. So the whole thing with paternal leave. Yeah, but also parental leave is that you should divide it so that the husband or the man or the partner, I mean, we of course acknowledge that there are a lot of genders out there and that people are dividing, but like what we could do in Sweden, which is quite new actually, if you're two mothers, you can divide it as well.
That's wonderful.
But it is. But to make sure that the okay, I'm saying men now. All right, that the partner who didn't give birth connects with the kid in a very, very hands-on, body-on, I'd say, emotional way, because that is like the life experience. That is you cannot exclude that from your life and then understand what women are talking about. You cannot exclude that thing from your life and then understand everything else that builds on that. Because if you're gonna, statistics says that men have higher rates of committing suicides when they're older, and some researchers have connected this because they're not attached to their families in the same ways. They don't have the same community surrounding them, and that is also, men tend to live for work. I hope that this is a generational thing that is going out, that we're seeing new generations growing up that are actually attaching to one another and not committing suicide when they are stopping their work. But there is so much tied into this, and it's so important. And the most important thing for me is that whenever a woman or a man or someone who identifies as another gender enters a career, the person in charge would say, they are in their 30s, they probably will get a kid soon, so maybe we'll adjust to that. We'll see what comes up and find a way, no matter what their gender is. And when that happens, when they become a parent, because we need to make sure that there is a new generation, right? Buyers, new buyers, right? Always the economical argument, right? Yeah. But and then to make sure that this environmental thing that is surrounding these people who are working are making sure that they can be a parent as well. We are talking about childcare at venues, making sure that there is enough support in the budget to support a babysitter, to support extra people who can come on you on tour, blah, 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 blah. Just make sure that this is included in the thinking.
Yeah. No, we have to be investing in people.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the end of the day, It's about investing in people and seeing the importance in people and giving them support, because at the end of the day, we all need it. You know, this is I am blessed that I was able to have the experience of seeing the other side. I was the stay-at-home parent. I was the one who gave up much of my career to kind of help be there so that my wife could get her career back. And it would have been nice if I was in a place where there was support from the government to do that. It would have been nice if there had been financial support, but we did it just on our own because it was what worked best for us. And as I'm venturing back out into my career, and I look at that going, we need to pay attention to people, because the people, everyone needs, what was that quote? Be kind to everyone because you don't know what they're going through. You know, that you don't see their struggles. Everyone's dealing with something. And I think that as a whole, we need to start looking at people for who they are and their inner value and their themness, you know, and paying attention to stories and paying attention to the right stories. And that's going to take a whole cultural shift, because we have really, and even now, I'm not. I think that social media can be a great tool, but it can also kind of promote really weird stuff at times. You know what I mean? Like, you look at some of the stuff. My daughter, I have very much. There are only certain things she's allowed to watch, but she's.
How old is your daughter?
5.
Oh, 5.
She is 2 clicks away from chaos on YouTube. That's all it takes is 1, 2, and it's like, what are you watching? Like, and I am very hands-on, and we do not get free reign of like what she watches educational videos, and I have very specific channels that are okay. I turn my back, and suddenly there's chaos. And my point being with that, is that humanity is its own greatest enemy for what we are doing, and we as a people, as a world culture, are standing at this point where we can make change to go down a path that is validating toward all of us, inclusive towards all of us, and listens to the stories of all of us. And we have the tools to do it. We have companies that can help us do that could be prioritizing, focusing on shared values, not division, not using their algorithms to divide us. But if we speak up about it more, it will be more likely that it happens.
Yeah, and I'm thinking social media. One hand, I mean, my generation, maybe we are the same generation, you and me. We are grown up with PR and newspapers and ads and like the old way of actually doing commercial work. The people who are growing up today are growing up with a totally different thing, but they are also growing up with the awareness of this. They are aware what lies behind every social media account. They understand, but I also think that they are aware that some people, I mean, I hear authenticity. It's a hard word for a Swede to say. Authenticity, is that the word?
You nailed it.
Yeah, I did it. But that word I hear, even though my kids don't really understand what it means, I think that they understand the concept. And I think that people are more and more aware of like what connects for real is for real. So even if you're just a big star is doing that, what we talked about, this posting, oh, this is me post shower, even though it isn't. Like I heard that they prepare 30
my boyfriend
pictures.
took a photo of me while I was sleeping.
It just happened. Exactly. And so you were like in Crystal in Dallas, who had this like really heavy eye makeup when she woke up in the morning. I was like, yeah, whatever. No, that was Dynasty. Sorry. But that they are aware in a totally different way, and that when it relates to art, for me that is okay, because when you appreciate art in whatever art form it is, that is the connection, right? It's what connects with you, and the authenticity of the sender and the receiver, right? And like how the two of them connect. So I wish for better informed generation to come along and to understand better, like the superficial idea that our generation created, that is a bit ripped into pieces, and that people see and also appreciate the real world that we can put on social media. Like the post-pregnancy stomach, it's okay. Yeah, and it's okay to have it there. We don't need this, what do you say, retushering. We say,
you don't need everything to be retouched.
Retouched, yeah. So you can, and that, but that can also be appreciated. That can actually be a quality, like non-retouched. Look, I'm 48 years old and I look like this. Yeah, with all my wrinkles and my, belly and such.
And that's awesome.
I'll hope for that. Right. This means that you lie in Sweden.
This means you lie? It means something very bad in Vietnam. So I'm always like, good luck. And people are like,
God. I'm so sorry.
No, it's not a problem. Not a problem.
That's so funny. But okay, in Sweden we say, exactly, that's true. This is what we do in Sweden. Hold our thumbs.
Hold our thumbs. What does this mean?
Fingers crossed.
This means like fingers crossed.
Yeah. So the fingers, thumbs held that it turns out this way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What? I want to ask you a question. If you could give advice to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
I've been not asked that question, but I've read it. And I am actually quite proud of myself when I was young. I'm proud of being so unscared and constantly so super curious about everything. So I would just say, yeah, girl, you do your thing.
I love that. That is going to be the title of this video. Do your thing. I'm writing that down.
No, but actually, if when I was in my 20s, of course, I didn't know a lot of things, and that was also 27 years ago. So that was like a long time ago, and the world was different. Yeah. So I didn't have much alternative, right? Mm-hmm. The world has evolved a lot, and I did what I could do with what I had, and I am super. I was a feminist when I was 7 years old, so
That's awesome.
I've done this shouting quite a lot, for quite some time.
Well, that's awesome.